and welcome to episode 2 of this Microsoft Access series. And today we actually go into the actual planning for a database. Last time out, we delved deeper into how to come up with a database, just like what has been displayed on your screen. So if you have not actually watched that video on how to create an MX Access database or MX Access file and save it in your desktop or in your folder, then you need to go back and watch that tutorial. So today we actually go into planning, and planning is very important because this is where now you understand actually the your tables, your database, and your relationships and how they are going to appear. So first we go to this table here, because actually before you come up with your database, you need to plan on a piece of paper. So for this purpose, I'm going to be using this Microsoft Word document here to be able to show you how the table appears and be able to discuss some details about a table. So if you look at this, what we have here as a column going downwards is where we have the columns, and the columns contains what we call the field names. So field names are actually the names of the fields that will be contained in your database, and they can span over several columns. And then going down horizontally, what we call the rows or the records, which is going to be containing the records. So for example, if you are talking about a student database and this is a student details table, so this column here will contain fields like student name, roll number or admission number. And then for the records, this is the actual data where you have like if the student name, you have mark, etc. So I hope you understand now what is the importance of the columns and what is the importance of the rows in the database. And it is very important to be able to name your fields in a way that you are going to remember actually in 6 years, 7 years, what that actually meant. So I want to show you an example of a poorly arranged table in a database. For example, if you look at the table, there it is not even actually named. It is just named as table 1. So you actually can't even know what the table contains or is all about. Then if you go to the field name, if you look at this field name and then there is the data type and then the description, I'll just take you back to Access for a little bit so that you can be able to understand this view we are seeing here from the actual database. So if you come to this table here on the Microsoft Access, and then you go and change the view. Remember, you are on the field menu, and then change the view to design view. Then you actually have the same format as I have displayed on the other side. So now you can be able to relate between the two, between what I have on paper and what is actually on the database. This is where we have the field names, the data type, and the description for these fields. And this is important but also optional because it describes what field that field contains. So we go back to our dummy data, and we look at this table. You can see that the field name here is named as info1. Actually, see, in 6 years you might not be able to remember what info1 meant. You look at another column here, just labeled as column 3. Actually, you can't even tell what column 3 contained, but you can see in the description that the designer wanted column 3 to actually contain a phone number. But this cannot be outright from this field named column 3. Also, we have another column named field. Field 4 does not even actually make any meaning. But you can see that the intention here was actually to have a date. You can see another one called X, and then the data type is short text, so you might not actually know what field that is or what data it will contain. So how can we improve on this table? How do we improve on this table to actually have a meaningful table? So we go to another table here. Now this table is an improved version, a data table that actually makes more sense and well arranged. So as you plan your database, then you must make sure that the field names actually have something or mean something, and also the data type is well put, and also the descriptions are well put. So for example, you can see that under this, the table is labeled, it is a student's table. You can also see that at the student table, we have the student ID, and we are going to talk about this key here. You can see that there is a small key that has been put on the student ID, and that means that this field here is going to be the primary key. So we are going to talk later about the primary key and why it is important in our databases. Then the data type is auto number. We are going to talk about the data type also shortly. And then the description, unique ID, and then auto-generated. So you can see that the other ones are well labeled. The first name, you can tell that this is a student first name. You can tell that this is a phone number, enrollment date, tuition, that is the fee in term, and that's why it is put in form of currency. And then a status here, is the student active, yes or no, which will be a checkbox, or can be a true or false only situation. So at this point, we want to compare the two tables and see why it is important to have your name field or your names of the fields named properly for the purpose that it fits. So you can see that on this side, we have a confusing table whereby we are talking about info, columns, fields, which actually doesn't make any sense. But on the other side, on the right side, we have a field or field names and data types which actually are very clear even to other users. So you can see, and this gives a very good comparison. So as you create the tables on your paperwork, as you create the field names, as you put the data types, make sure they are very elaborate. So at that point, then we need to talk about what a data type is. So I have some examples here of a data type. So depending on the field or what you intend to put as records in your table, then the data type will give you or the data type comes from the data that you actually want to put. So the common data types are one, short text. These are used for things such as name, email, place, all this you can be able to use short text. Then you can be able to have number. Number is used for age, quantity. Actually, number is used in instances where you need to even have calculations. So you use number. Someone might be able to ask why we don't use number for something like phone number. So for phone number, you cannot use the data type as number because it will automatically eliminate a zero if your phone number starts with a zero. For example, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. In your database records, this 0 will be excluded in your records. So the correct data type to use for your phone number then will become short text. Date or time, you can use it for enrollment date, due date, etc. Then we also have currency. For example, things like price of a commodity, tuition fee, etc. Then institutions where you can be able to use this yes or no. Something maybe is active, paid, reported. All these circumstances you can be able to use yes or no data type. So actually these are some of the most common data type. Of course, there are others such as hyperlink and etc. And we are going to see them actually when we are doing the actual databases. So at this juncture, I want to talk about the primary key. We talked about a key in the student field. So this key here, we talked about a key having a student ID as a key. So this is normally referred to as a primary key. And where you find it in Access, for example, in our table, you can see the primary key around this point here, which is active. So when you click on it and it is grayed, it becomes active. And you can see that on this row here, the primary key is indicated. If you click on it, the key disappears. So the primary key is a unique identifier for each record in a database. For example, if you have a student database, a student might have similar names. A student might have similar places of residence, but a student will have distinct admission numbers or enrollment numbers So that becomes the unique identifier for each record. So if you go back to where we are designing our database from, then you need to clearly show which record contains the primary key. So for example, if this is where we have our admission number, then this field here automatically will become the primary key because it is going to uniquely identify all the students that are going to be inserted in the records. And that is the purpose for the primary key. So why is it important for us to plan on paper before we actually do the actual database? It helps us not to be able to rebuild or start creating tables after we have created them in the actual database, because the creating them on paper will allow you to have modifications even before you actually do it on the actual database. It makes you understand your database better, the actual database. So today we are not going to go to actually the actual database. We are just going to plan a simple database. So for example, we want to plan a simple database for a library database. So we are going to do this with you, and then later on you are going to carry out your own database design for database of your own choice. So we want to design a library database, and for this purpose our library database is going to actually have two tables. So we are going to have two tables in our database. So I'll just insert a table with a few rows. So on this column here we will have the field name, just like the way we have on the database design. We have the field name. On the other side we have the data type, and I'm going to explain to you why we choose a particular database data type as we continue. So for the library database, one of the tables will be books, because as you know that library database will be a database for issuing books, keeping records of students issued with books, and etc. So we have field names. So one of the field name is going to be book ID. Remember, in the rules for giving field names, we should not have spaces. So this book ID, the database is the data type is going to be short text. But you note that I'm going to put in brackets here that this is going to be my unique identifier, so it becomes my primary key. So the next field is going to be title. For the title, you still have short text, so you can just copy this to this part here. Then we also have we can have another field, order, or order of the database, order of the book, sorry. So for the order, again we still maintain short text. Then we can also have another field here, genre, the genre of the book. Again, it also carries short text. And then finally we can have, is it available, and then we can have the data type as yes or no condition, whether the book is available for issuing or no. So that is one of the tables that we can have in our database. And then we can also have another table. We can have a table called members. So these are members for maybe the members associated with the library, those who have registered. So from the members table, again, we can be able to insert, remember this is a planning stage, we can be able to insert a table with several rows. So on one side we have the field, and then on the other side we have the data type. So for the description, you can be able to put anything that you wish, anything that describes the actually what is contained in the field. So for the members, we can have member ID. Remember, it is paramount to have primary key in all tables, if as much as possible. So member ID becomes the primary key. It contains data type as short text, and I'm going to put now this in brackets to have it as the primary key. And then we also have the the name, that is the member's name. You can be able to subdivide it into maybe first name to be able to have a very elaborate database, and then you can be able to have the second name. So all these two will contain a data type as the data type as short text. So we have them there as short text, and then finally we can have the joining date. Maybe you want to record dates that these members joined the library. So joining date, and the data type automatically here becomes date. And remember, you can be able to have dates in different format. So maybe you can specify that you want to put it as a short date. We are going to come and see that later. So guys, you can be able to see that now I'll be able to create my database. I'm planning my database on a piece of paper even before I go to the actual database. So I know my database name is library. I know that I have a table, one called books, and I also have another table, 2 here called members. So from this point now, we'll go into the actual database creation in the next tutorial. So thank you guys for watching and following. Do not forget to share, ask any question in the comment, and also like this video, and see you in the next tutorial.